This is Jack Stanley, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I thought it would be an interesting time to talk. You know, I'm looking at what's going on in Hollywood right now, and of course, there's lots of things going on concerning impropriety. Harvey Weinstein has kind of been banned from everything, and a number of other individuals have been accused of sexual impropriety. And, of course, Kevin Spacey has been more or less alleged to have tried to force himself on a 14-year-old at a party. Well, this is Hollywood. You know, I'm not trying to condone this activity, but it's been something that's been going on for a long time. I don't think we truly realize how long such activities have been going on in Hollywood. It's been going on for 100 years. Got to remember, go back to the earliest days of Hollywood. Who did you have there? Perhaps one of the greatest predators of all, Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin had a fetish, practically, of deflowering underage girls. A couple of them he had to marry because he got them pregnant. But he was dangerous around women, and he had affairs with, countless women, and was married many times. He was an interesting fellow, but he was like a major predator in Hollywood, and if you were cute and young, you better run. There was also times in Hollywood where there were parties, and look at Fatty Arbuckle. You know, Fatty Arbuckle is famous for, after a big party and orgy, there was a girl there named by the name of Virginia Rappe, and of course she died. She had a bottle inserted in her vagina, and she hemorrhaged. Other people got involved in the whole thing and created this whole big scene. Now, the thing is, do I think Fatty Arbuckle did that? I don't. But nonetheless, it destroyed his career, and Hollywood was looked upon as a bastion of problems and naughty activities, and much of the actions of Hollywood would lead to the development of an organization called the Hays Bureau. And the Hays Bureau was to find decency in movies. And, well, nonetheless, Fatty Arbuckle's career was finished. And you know something? What was really fascinating about Hollywood, and so ahead of everyone else in many respects, is that you had the studio system, and the studio system protected people. So if they were gay, you wouldn't know it. If they had issues, you wouldn't know it. If you were a lesbian, they wouldn't know it. It was all kept under the cover of the studio system. You know, think of some of the outstanding gay performers. Look at Cary Grant and his partner, Randolph Scott. They were openly gay in Hollywood, and they had the best parties. There's great films of them together. They were together for years. Of course, no one ever knew that Cary Grant was gay at the time. It was carefully hidden. Lots of other performers were hidden and protected by the studio system. Some actors had events with directors or agents or managers or directors or cameramen or whatever it may be. And of course it caused issues. That's why Clark Gable couldn't work with a certain director, because they had a moment together, as it were. Tallulah Bankhead, wow, she was wild. She had some issues. She couldn't work with some people, and that was true. You had lots of people involved with other people, and sometimes there were a lot of things going on, like Charlie Chaplin's mistresses were all over the place, and Goddard, who was his main squeeze, was looked upon as playing Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, but they felt since she was the mistress of Charlie Chaplin, she couldn't have the role, so that killed it. Of course, Clark Gable got the role, but they had to change directors because Clark Gable had had sex with that director. It's kind of amazing. You know, the thing is, it was wild and crazy, and there was a lot of debauchery in Hollywood. No different than it is today. Now, of course, there were lots of young people in Hollywood in the early days. And, of course, they had the predators like Charlie Chaplin around and lots of other people. There were lots of agents saying, you want to get a good job, I'll take care of you. And they had the casting couch. I mean, how many great actresses or actors had to more or less basically put out to get in? And, of course, there were other things. You know, there was an area of Hollywood that doesn't get talked about too much. And it was outside of Hollywood per se. It was an area called Shangri-La. It was a series of bungalows. And that's where many actors would hide. That's where many actors and actresses could be themselves, and that's where they could bring their gay lovers, or their straight lovers, or their lesbian lovers, and they could hang out at Shangri-La, and no one would bother them, because that was what the deal was. Earl Flynn was there a lot, and no one was safe around Earl Flynn. You know, it's an interesting thing. I knew an individual who used to hang out at Shangri-La in the 1930s and 40s. He was a bit actor who worked in the background all the time. His name was Ted Spangenberg, and he was an amazing individual, and he was bigger than life, and he was very grand in everything he did. And he shared a bungalow for a while with Robert Benchley. Now, Robert Benchley was quite the drinker, and Ted used to say that cocktail time started at 9 a.m. And he didn't like Earl Flynn. He said he was a pig. That's how he described him. And he had all kinds of bizarre things going on, him and David Niven and others. And one time, Earl Flynn convinced the Ballet Aristocana to come to Shangri-La and perform their routines, naked, of course. And, of course, there were drugs and there was alcohol and, you know, the same old kind of thing that you have today. And, of course, Earl Flynn had many underage girl. And, of course, many of these actors had underage lovers. The interesting thing is that now, what had been the modus operandi in Hollywood is no longer being accepted as being the modus operandi. And now you're seeing a lot of people being dragged out and exposed for what they are, pedophiles, or pushy people who take advantage of those who don't have the power, and they do. So all of this outrage about Hollywood is interesting, but we have to remember it comes from a long legacy of outrage. It comes from a long legacy of lots of nefarious things going on. And from the early days of the 20th century to this period of 2017, Hollywood, California, has been a center for all different types of activity. Some good, some bad, some wonderful, some frightening. But it was an area where people could be themselves. But sadly, it was an area where some predators had their way. And as you can see to this very day, there's still some there. That's got to change. It should have changed a long time ago. We should have known better. Well, Hollywood is finally growing up. Let's hope that everything changes and they do clean up their act a bit. Thank you.